What is up, everybody? Time for another aim-related video. This is a follow-up to the previous one where I talked about mouse control and all of that. In this video, I'm going to show you one of the playlists that Minnie actually created for me maybe like 5-6 months ago. Needs some updating, but generally speaking, the principles of what I need to work on are quite similar. So I'm going to take you through this, and I'm going to take you through not just the tasks and the logic for each task that we're going to play, but I'm also going to talk to you about the most important aspects to playing the task, because it's not enough just to be able to pick the right tasks. You also need to make sure that you are playing the tasks correctly, so your focus is on the things that will help you to improve and get better at what you need to actually get better at. So the first task is Voltaic SmoothPill Silver, and I released a tracking video recently where I talked about how you can change your sensitivity to try to improve your ability to get results with this. But the idea for me is that I'm very much wanting to isolate my arm, and so this is a very good task to try to get the arm smoothness. Let me get the sound back on. There we go. Get the arm smoothness going. And generally speaking, whenever you're doing any of these tasks, if you can't talk and also perform well in the task, it's probably an indication that it requires so much focus to actually do the task that is challenging enough for you to still be able to get some gains from doing it. Because you also have to recognize when something's a bit too easy and not challenging enough. But for me, it's an indication that because I'm splitting my focus between talking and playing the task and struggling a little bit, that it's an indication that, wow, this is still very challenging for me in certain ways. So with this, you want to make sure your tension is very, very minimal on the mouse. And so we talked about this a bunch of times. One way that you can do this is by rebinding your fire button so that it's like I have left control, but rebinding it to something on the keyboard to just really minimize tension on the mouse, because you're trying to get the feeling of minimal tension and tracking with minimal tension. And tension is a huge problem for many players. They'll like grip the mouse. So habituate the feeling of very little tension and then tracking with it. That's what we're trying to do. Just get that feeling. And when I say get that feeling, it's kind of like if you guys have been in the gym, you know the like the mind muscle connection that we talk about, which is a very real thing. In science, it is a very real thing. It's very similar here. You're feeling what it feels like to have minimal tension. You're feeling what it feels like to have very precise tracking on your sends, or very, wide kind of, large movements where you're still getting a lot of smoothness. And don't worry too much if you're like flicking, all over the place or beyond the target. Just try to focus on just being as smooth as possible. And that's really the key. So moving into the next task, XYZ track, XYZ or XY track. It's very similar. I'm just forcing my arm movement because, arm is what I'm trying to develop as much as possible. I want to develop my arm into being able to do everything, all the tracking and flicking skills. So here I have a vertical reactive, or more vertical reactive tracking task. So this is getting my arm learning how to kind of track in a more vertical space where I'm having to react to it, and I'm having to maintain smoothness. I'm having to, keep my tension very low and just follow the orb as best as I can. And again, it's something that Minnie has said many times. A little mental trick that might be helpful for you to reduce the tension on the mouse is to imagine it as something fragile like an egg. And don't worry about missing too much. Again, it's really just about getting that feeling of smoothness. Things will improve over time. It's really easy to be isolating your skill and making judgments about where you are in the vacuum of that 1 minute of how you performed, at that task at that moment, or even in a day, how you improve, or rather how you were performance-wise across that day. But it's a long process to kind of get you improving in all of these things. It takes a while, which is also why good sleep is important, because technique work as a link to well, essentially when you're going through, I believe your REM sleep, your brain essentially takes all of the technique oriented stuff that you did, and it replays it at 20 times speed to try to learn things when you're sleeping. So good quality sleep important as well with stuff like this. So this next task is Voltaic ConrtolTrack Blink Novice. So this will just combine a flick with the tracking. So you got the precision tracking after a flick. So it's about like this deceleration after the flick. If you're so tense on your flick, you'll flick too hard and you'll be jerky. That's what that will look like. So you want it to be the case that, maybe you'll like over flick a little bit or under flick, but just make sure that it's a fast but clean movement that's not got a lot of tension. And again, for me, I'm focused on just arm with everything here. And it's about having the control after the flick. So it's combining these two techniques, flick, but how does the flick relate to the control with the track that follows. So that's really what you're focused on here. As it goes closer or farther to you, or move faster or slower, challenging your ability to have smoothness at different speeds and have control at different sort of speeds, and also flicking at different precisions. So that's that one. It combines a couple skills together for my arm. This next one also, again, for me, it's a big arm focus. I could do this easily with my wrist, but this is a static, clicking task. And I'm forcing my arm to be doing this. And I'll probably make a separate video about static clicking, about like the bar pill method, because it's just pretty essential for tactical FPS players where first bullet precision is very important. But I often tend to over and under flick, especially on the vertical ones with my arm. So that's something that I've noticed is a leak for me. But again, I'm very new to developing this skill, so that's totally fine. And it's improved. It's improved quite a lot as time's gone on. So, and as it gets better over time, I'll be very happy. So that's what this is really all about. It's just for me to be able to like say, hey, I just need to force my arm to get better at static clicking. So here's an easy static clicking task, which gets me doing big flicks. So I don't rely on my wrist to do these big flicks and then have limited control because I've just done a massive flick on my wrist and have to aim afterwards. This next task, Voltaic AngleShot VALORANT, is all about click timing. So to simplify this, I'll just talk about, I would say, like maybe 2 or 3 of the main important concepts for when you're playing this one. You really want to focus on flicking ahead of the target and then clicking as it moves into the crosshair. And what we're practicing here is this sense of click timing where you're having to hit confirm the target. Your brain has to register, oh, it's actually moved in front in my crosshair, and now I click. And as you can imagine, in tactical FPS games, this is super important, because in a tactical FPS game, you're holding your crosshair on an angle, like an off angle or something, and someone's going to move into it. You have to click at the right time. And those are kills you should really get. You've got the advantage, you've set yourself up, but you have to train your brain at this skill, because it is a skill that your brain like calculates the velocity and understands what's the timing of the target moving into the crosshair. So you want to try to have a slight leading distance off of your flick, and you want to try to, I might not be doing it perfect here, but you want to try to have high accuracy. You don't want to spam your clicks, and you want to have a leading distance to the target. You could really simplify it and have like a big leading distance. Doesn't really matter. The whole point is that you're trying to actually practice not getting a high score, but you're trying to practice clicking when it moves into the crosshair. So don't stress out about the score. Just try to get a good leading distance. Try not to just track the target all the time. Again, we really want to focus on the click timing. And as you get better control, you'll speed up over time, because you'll be able to move between the targets. You'll have like a good leading distance, and maybe you'll be straight on the target, and then of course you can click. But we're also practicing this idea of our brain confirming that something has gone into the crosshair, because you want to have high accuracy with these kinds of tasks. That's really, really key. You do not want to be spamming. It can be hard to have high accuracy, but really try to focus on high accuracy where you are not spamming. You want your brain to practice, I have flicked, I confirm that that target is in my crosshair, and then I click. Because when you're playing the game, for example, you're often going to be off on your flicks, and you're going to have to make an adjustment. But if you have that process built into your mind, and by the way, if you watch Demon 1, like, he's very, very good at this. And this is when we had Mini on the podcast, he said that you can tell, like, Demon 1, he takes his time. Demon 1's super fast with his movements, but it's because he has really built in this skill where he confirms where the target is relative to his crosshair immediately off of the flick. And that skill is something you can practice. Obviously, that's something that's really hard to train and isolate when you're actually playing the game, but it's something that we can practice and can help us get better at our click timing. So click timing task, that's mostly what that's about. If you want to focus on one thing, focus on the click timing element, get a leading distance to the target. So this next one is arm flicks, but then because you're having to hold your, well, for me it's control down to shoot the target, it's kind of like a tracking thing, but it's not moving. It's about the flick into fingertip adjustment. So I'm flicking my arm and then adjusting my fingertips. So it's giving me practice at this relationship between my arm. and my fingers. Because it's pretty easy for me to have like my crosshair almost dead on most of these targets, but sometimes it's a little bit off and I can just do the correction with my fingertips. So that's really what this is trying to help out with, is that relationship between the arm flick and the fingertips. So in terms of what to focus on here, it's really just focus for me on a good arm movement, and then making sure that I'm like really focused on where the crosshair is on relation to the target, and then making the right fingertip adjustment. So nothing too complicated with this one. The Voltaic MicroBlink click, is that what it's called? Yes. This task is about targets that are strafing at long range and you're trying to just tap their heads, basically. I had a lot of issues with this, and there was some footage that many showed me of me like really failing in these types of fights, and so we isolated this as a skill I wanted to work on. So with this, you really want to focus on taking your time to build, like with everything, take your time to build the control. It's tempting to like want to go really fast and like try to like go really fast and start spamming click, but we want to just try to be accurate. We want one movement, and again, you don't have to be really fast, but we build control first and speed later. And if we get really good at the hit confirm stuff, we can even make tiny adjustments if we are off with our fingertips. And the reason why this doesn't instantly blink is because it's trying to mimic what a model would do in the game. So this is for the AD, and just try to get control first and don't spam with this one. You try to get like above 85% accuracy if you can. If a task is beyond 95% accuracy for you, or 90% even, it might be too easy for you. There's, I think, really a sweet spot in how challenging it would be. And that's honestly, I think, between like the 80 and 95% range is a good amount of... Oh, sorry, the 80 and 90% range is a good amount of challenge. If you're under 80%, it's probably either you're doing the task in a way that is just not controlled enough, or it's the case that it's too difficult for you to get the meaningful gains. So this next task is a similar kind of click timing task. Amare MicroShot, but there's less distance to move the mouse. So as I do a lot of arm work, sometimes I just try to focus on fingertips and wrists with this one. And again, I'm trying to really try to get your brain in the mode of like trying to flick in front of the target if you can. And you can see I've already dropped accuracy massively. It's really hard with these ones because you can get juked a lot by the targets. You just have to like practice taking your time, being patient. It's not about the score. It's about training the skill, flick in front. Really have your eyes on the target. And sometimes you can see I'm tracking. And again, it kind of depends on what you want to work on too, by the way. Like if you want to work on like just like these micro tracks, then that's actually okay too, because in a way, like as I say, for me, click timing is more valuable at the moment. But the precision tracking and then clicking is actually important too, because let's say you're in a fight and it's like a ghost situation where you're just tapping heads. When you're actually tapping heads, you're doing this type of tracking where you're like you're tracking the target and you're clicking precisely. So use the target in the way that will benefit you, but be aware that there's different ways to play these different tasks. I've given you some of the logic as to how I play them and why I use them. And I hope that was useful in this video as you progress through your aim journey, as you pick tasks that are relevant to the skills that you want to train, as you understand maybe how to put the emphasis on like which technique and where. With that said, feel free as always to give me any comments or questions in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer. And if you enjoyed this, found it valuable, please subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.